On the morning my son tried to have me admitted to a memory care facility, where the sheriff was waiting with a blue folder, and a very different set of papers. The house he thought he was selling had already been moved into a charitable trust with my name on the life estate. By the time he realized what I had done, it was too late. Every exit he thought he had left open was already locked. Before we dive deeper, don't forget to subscribe and drop a comment letting us know where you're tuning in from. My name is Harold Hal Benton, and I am 71 years old. I spent 37 years as a building inspector for the city and 39 married to Ruth, who taught 3rd grade and saved every drawing any child ever pressed into her palm. 2 years ago, a sleepy driver kissed the back quarter of her blue Ford on a wet evening and took her from me. She left me her quilts folded like topographic maps, a wooden recipe box with the index cards all leaning the wrong way, and a granddaughter who still calls me Pops even though she calls everyone else by their proper names. I raised 2 children with Ruth. My daughter, Elaine, prefers quiet rooms and honest work. She married a librarian named Tamsin and, together, they have made a home that smells like cinnamon. My son, Daniel, prefers rooms with applause. He has always been handsome, and he knows it. He sells houses for a living. He married Melissa, another real estate agent, 15 years back. They dress well and post coordinated photos after every weekend. Their daughter, my granddaughter, Maddie, is 13, shy around cameras and kind to small things. It began with my knee and a round of pool. It was late April, a Sunday afternoon, and I was at the community center that used to be a brick factory. Some boys were showing off trick shots more suited to bars than to a room with a bulletin board of blood drives. One of them slammed his cue into the felt to spin the cue ball off a rail, and I stepped back to give him room. I stepped on a warped board, and my knee, already a stubborn hinge, decided it had led enough parades. I did not fall, but I sat down as fast as any man can sit who wants to pretend he chose to sit. The boys apologized like puppies. 2 days later, an orthopedic doctor told me I needed a replacement. "You are lucky," he said. "We have openings at the end of May. You will be grilling on Memorial Day with a new hinge." "I take my steaks in a pan," I said. Daniel insisted on driving me home. He showed up with Melissa, bright and early, with smoothies he knew I would not drink. In the kitchen, I tapped the stove knob with my knuckle. I keep the gas lines like I keep my ledgers, tight. Melissa rubbed my back and said, "We will take care of all this, Hal. You should not be hauling laundry or climbing ladders. We will call the contractor about the gutters and finally fix the back fence." I had not asked anyone to call any contractor, but I did not say so in the moment. I said, "There is not a rush on the fence." "Well, there is, actually," she said. "I have a guy." I stood staring at the plank that was a shade lighter than the rest. I had replaced it myself 6 months before. I felt the first prickling then, not for the plank but for the way Melissa's hand kneaded my upper arm like bread that could be worked into any shape. She has always had a gentle voice for clients and a brisk one for those who disagree. She used the gentle one on me as if to sew it into my skin. Before the surgery, my pastor, my barber, my neighbor Nora from across the street, all of them offered me rides, casseroles, and jokes about my knee. Daniel and Melissa offered an empty room at their place for the first week. "You have to let us," Daniel said, holding both of my forearms like I might tip over. "Hospital to our place, then a week later we will bring you home. We can set up the guest room, make you comfortable, get you a bell." "I have 2 hands and a phone," I said, but I saw Maddie hovering behind the sofa with a book and heard her say, "Please, Pops." So I agreed. The surgery was textbook. I came awake in a room with a window that looked at a brick wall and a television showing a game I did not care about. A nurse with a firm ponytail asked me to wiggle my foot, then my toes. I did as I was told. She told me I was going to be fine and meant it. I stayed one night. Daniel signed papers like a man who has been waiting for papers all his life. He walked down the hall to talk to my discharge nurse twice as often as he needed to. Melissa had a clipboard. She has always loved a clipboard. When they brought me to their house, Maddie had hung a banner that said, "Welcome home, me." The letters were not straight. It made me happy. The second morning there, I woke early. I am not much for sleeping late, my bones try to beat sunrise. I was in the guest room, and I could hear voices through the heating vent. Daniel's voice was lower than usual. Melissa's had the edges she uses when a seller will not repaint the front door the shade of gray she prefers. The home equity line has to be drawn before he gets home, she said. We cannot keep paying for your stupid. Keep your voice down, Daniel hissed. And do not call it that. We can say we are doing improvements. The bank will want a contractor estimate. I will get an estimate. And you think he will not notice a $200,000 lien? We are on the title now. He let us add you to the account last year. If the cashier knows me, half the time they do not even ask for the second signature. I do not like this, she said, but her voice softened on the word like, which is how I knew she did like it. She liked getting what she wanted. So did Daniel. I lay very still until the floor stopped creaking above me. Then, room by room, I pieced together the last 18 months in my head. It had started after Ruth's funeral. Daniel had insisted I did not need a lawyer to handle the little things, because real estate is paper, and he knew paper like a pianist knows keys. He had me sign a handful of items at his kitchen table the week after we buried her, when my eyes were raw enough to make my handwriting look like a stranger's. One of them, I remembered, was, for your protection, Dad, a shared checking account so he could make sure the utilities do not go off. Another was a signature card at the bank that, it turns out, made him a joint owner of the account and not just a helper. He said it was easier. I am old but not a fool. I did not give him power of attorney. I told him I would never sign that with the ink still wet on the death certificates. He had not asked since. I did my exercises. I smiled at Melissa's smoothies. I watched squirrels perform acrobatics for a half hour outside the window and tried not to imagine a ledger in Daniel's car with numbers written beside my name. That afternoon, when Maddie came in from school, she sat at the foot of the bed and read me 3 chapters out loud from a book about a boy who wants to build a treehouse but keeps measuring wrong. She fell asleep with the last sentence hanging in the air, and I wished I could fold that sound and keep it in my pocket. On the third day, while Melissa and Daniel were showing a house and Maddie was at soccer practice, I asked Tamsin to come pick me up. We went to my house, just to walk the halls and say hello to the things I owned. The air had that smell of a place that has not been opened in a week. I have a lock on my office that I installed the day after Ruth died, not because I do not trust my own child but because grief makes people nosy and I needed a room where no one else would rearrange my stacks. I unlocked the office. The light pooled across the desks. My ledgers were where I left them. The lower drawer with the false front still hid the long envelope of old deeds like a magician's scarf. But the bookcase behind my chair had been disturbed. There is a brown hardcover about the history of the fire department in our city. It has a tiny tear at the bottom left of the spine. The tear was at eye level, pointing east before, now it was pointing up. Someone had taken it down, then put it back. I do not rely on the obvious, so do not think the book spine was all I had. The air moved wrong in that room. One tile in the drop ceiling was not fully seated. The chair had a new squeak. The clock was 5 minutes slow and always runs fast. I did not track these things like a detective does on television. I tracked them the way an old building tracks every nail, every squeak, every window that swells when it rains. My work was what taught me how to see the difference between a house that has been staged and a house that has been lived in. I phoned Elaine. She went still when I used the voice I reserve for emergencies. "Do you think they would?" she started, and then stopped. "Tell me what you see." I told her the book spine, the tile, the squeak, the clock. I told her the vent conversation about a home equity line of credit, the way Melissa's voice bent around the word like. I told her about the clipboard. She was quiet for a long time. "We are going to see Alma tomorrow," she said. "Do not say anything to them tonight. Do not sign anything. Do not leave your wallet where they can reach it. Do not leave your laptop logged in to your email. I am coming over in the morning." Alma Daniels is a lawyer who knows my family so well. She wrote the trust that protected Ruth's aunt when her own son tried to sell the family home out from under her in 2007. Alma believes in paper like a religion. She also believes in decency, and she does not let you confuse the two. The next morning, Elaine drove me to Alma's office. I took the cane I swore I did not need. The receptionist, girl with a nose ring and a laugh that did not wait for good jokes, brought us tea and a stack of sticky notes. Alma came in wearing the gray cardigan that all women who do their jobs well seem to keep on the backs of their doors. She listened to my story without interrupting. When I finished, she took a breath that sounded like she was about to begin a sentence. Instead she asked, "Do you have your original deed?" "In the false drawer," I said. "We are going back to the house," she said to Elaine. "Bring a banker's box and a rolling cart. Hal, you are going to answer your phone if your son calls, but you are not going to talk for long. You are going to be cheerful." "Cheerful," I said. "We are going to move assets. We are going to create two new things. One, a trust that takes legal title to your home and grants you a full life estate with the power to sell, but only in combination with the trust. 2, a charitable right-of-use agreement that licenses the finished basement and the old sunroom to a non-profit that does after-school literacy programs. The trust will have 2 co-trustees, you and a small foundation we are going to form with a board of 3 people who do not share your last name. That board will include me, a retired judge I can ask, and a librarian who will love Ruth's name above a doorway." "Ruth would like that," I said. My throat got thick. "We are going to fund a $529 education plan for Maddie and a custodial account that releases at 25, and we are going to put conditions in your will that any bequest to Daniel or Melissa is contingent on them signing a settlement agreement that includes repayment of any money we can show they took without your consent. If there was fraud, we will make felony referrals. We will not bluff with criminal law, we will only do it if we should. If they committed no crime, we will not pretend they did. Either way, they are not getting your house." She said all of that like she was reading a grocery list, and perhaps for her, it was one. She handed me a pen. She had a notary from down the hall sit with us for an hour and stamp the documents that did not require filing. She sent an assistant named Maria to the county recorder with a stack of forms that would make any hothead swallow twice. "Before we do any of this," Alma said, "you must get a capacity letter from your primary care physician or a neurologist. We will not get into a fight where they can claim you do not understand what you are signing. We will put that letter in our folder. I have an appointment with a neurologist next Tuesday. Move it up," she said. Then she said, with a softness that surprised me, "You have done nothing wrong. If they want to sell their own house to pay their bills, they can. You are not a bill." Elaine drove me home, then drove to the school to watch Maddie play defense like a wall. That evening, Daniel brought over a casserole that tasted like the inside of a shipping container and an envelope he slid under a placemat when he thought I had not seen it. The envelope contained a home improvement plan with a number I will not forget, $198,600. "We need to get ahead of the wood rot," he said, tapping the line where he had penciled "rot" in like a ticket to sympathy. "There is no rot," I said. "You cannot tell from the street, Dad," he said. I had a guy look. "You and your guy can pound sand," I almost said, but I remembered Alma's cheerful, so instead I said, "I am touched you are thinking of me. I am tired. We will talk tomorrow." That night, I slept at my own house, in my own bed, with my cane leaning like a question mark beside the headboard. I woke at 2 a.m. and walked to the office without turning on the lights. I pulled out my old baby monitor from when Maddie slept in the room across the hall, and I plugged it in. I set the receiver in the living room where it could hear any conversation and the transmitter in the office covered by a map of the city that I had framed 30 years ago. The baby monitor crackled to life like a small radio. I went back to bed. I fell asleep imagining Ruth's hand smoothing the quilt. At 8 the next morning, with Elaine sitting at the kitchen table with a pencil behind her ear, a truck pulled in. It was painted with a name I did not recognize and a slogan that made me laugh: "We make homes honest." 2 men came to the door with a notary between them. The notary was young and looked like he had been told he was doing a good thing. Daniel and Melissa came in behind them like a wedding party. "What is all this?" I asked, keeping my voice in the blue range. "Dad," Daniel said, putting a hand on the notary's shoulder. "This is Pete. He is here to watch you sign the contractor estimate so the bank can release the funds. It is routine." The notary smiled at me. "We just need a signature, Mr. Benton." "I do not sign papers I have not read," I said, and took the estimate. It listed a deck repair I did not need, a stucco patch for a wall that was brick, and $10,000 for consulting. "Who is the consultant?" I asked. "The firm," Melissa said. She pointed to the logo on the truck, Wildwood Property Solutions. Under it, in smaller print, Daniel Benton, licensed agent. I folded the estimate and tapped it on the table like a deacon making a point in a gentle way. "I will not be signing this," I said. I looked at the notary and added, "I will sign a receipt for your time." "It is okay," the notary said, already stepping back. "You do not have to sign anything you do not want to sign. I will mark it as a refusal and go." Daniel's face did something I had seen only once before, when he lost a college soccer final on a bad call. It went pale around the mouth and red at the cheeks. He nodded at the notary like they had rehearsed nodding, but he skipped the script for me. "You are putting me in a bad spot, Dad. The work is scheduled." "You are putting yourself in the spot," I said. They left in a huff that would have knocked my picture frames crooked if my hanging nails were not true. Elaine and I stood in the window and watched, and my cane hummed against my palm. Her phone buzzed. It was Alma. The recorder had accepted everything. We were on file. The trust existed in the world like a second skeleton inside the first. 2 days later, Daniel used his emergency key to come in while I was at physical therapy. The baby monitor caught the sound of my office door opening, the drawers sliding, Melissa's voice, low and flat as a cutting board, saying, "Do not waste time. He is at therapy for another hour." He did not find what he came for. He did not know what to look for anymore. Men like my son prefer the top layer of any cake. The neurologist saw me that week. He made me follow his pen with my eyes and remember lists of fruit. He asked me the date and who was president and then asked me to draw a clock. I am one of those men who does not forgive a clock that loses a minute a week, so I drew mine with tiny tick marks and shaded hands and wrote the time as 9:20 because that is my favorite time to start any job. He smiled. He wrote the letter. He told me I was fit as a fiddle, if fiddles had high blood pressure and arthritis. You can make your own decisions, Mr. Benton, he said. Anyone who tells you otherwise is not a doctor. We added that letter to what Alma called the folder. The folder was a blue thing with a clear cover that made it look like a school packet. Inside were the trust instrument, the right-of-use agreement with the library, the capacity letter, the revocation of any signature cards Daniel might have tried to use to pose as a helper at my bank, and 3 printouts of my new will summary page. Alma believes in both paper and redundancy. We did not tell Daniel anything. We did tell the literacy nonprofit, because it would be wrong to put their name on the deed without a handshake. The director, a woman named June with eyebrows that moved like punctuation when she liked an idea, came to the house to see the basement. She ran her fingers over the old knotty pine like it was gold. We could make a reading room down here and a homework space in the sunroom. We will call it Ruth's room, she said, and I had to grip the banister harder than I meant to. The fight did not erupt at once. It crept in with texts from Daniel that started, "Hey Dad," without the comma, like respect left along with the punctuation. It pointed its nose in at dinner. Daniel lifted the lid on my stew and said it was too salty, and at the bank where a teller who knew me from the old church picnic slipped me a note that said, in pencil, "Your son asked about your balance 3 times today." When Alma heard that, she called the bank president and reminded him what fiduciary duty meant. The bank president sent a fruit basket to say he understood. Then, finally, Daniel played the scene he had rehearsed. He made an appointment for me at a care home without telling me. He scheduled it for the same day he had a photographer coming to take wide-angle pictures of my living room. Melissa had already set aside throw pillows that would pop. He brought his car around, parallel parked like a man on television, and rang the bell twice, the second ring longer than the first. "We are going to look at a place," he said. "I am not going." "This is not about you," he said, and realized it was a terrible thing to say as soon as he said it. He softened his mouth. "Dad. I am worried about you. The stairs. The stove. Those things. Do not you want to be somewhere with activities?" He made the last word sound like a present. "What kind of activities?" I asked. "Bingo. Movie nights. The works," he said. "You know I have my own bingo," I said. I picked up the blue folder. "Let us go see your place." He drove. I looked out the window at the trees that had gotten their leaves like men who suddenly remember they own suits. We pulled into a driveway that looked like a hotel. The sign said Maple Meadows Memory and Care. The woman at the front desk stood up when she saw us. She had a name tag that said Carol and a phone that lit up and she did not pick it up. "Mr. Benton," she said. "Yes," I said, and I put the blue folder on her counter. The sheriff stepped out from behind a glass door. He had the posture of a man who grew up picking up hay bales for fun. "Mr. Benton," he said. "We have some paperwork we need to go over with your family." "Sheriff, this is my son, Daniel," I said. "He and his wife have been trying to arrange a home equity loan on my house without my consent. I did no such, Daniel started. The sheriff held up a hand. We received a report of suspected elder financial exploitation, he said. It says there were attempts to move funds without consent. It says there were attempts to list a property without the owner's permission. We have some bank footage of a young woman who looks a lot like your wife trying to withdraw from an account she is not on using a signature card she is not authorized to use. He flipped the folder, which had been replaced by another comb-bound book in his hand. July in our town can be red hot and then, in a second, the light changes and everything gets a gray edge. That was one of those seconds. Daniel's mouth did the little quiver I had seen when he was 3 and broke my mother's wedding ring wrestling with a sofa cushion. He reached for the counter. The sheriff said, softly, "Put out your wrists, son." But Daniel did not leave in handcuffs that day. Melissa was not there to show him how to look like the person you expect when the camera light turns red, but the sheriff, whose name was Carl, which I learned later, told him they would be in touch. Carol handed me a pamphlet with nothing on it I needed. I took it anyway to keep my hands busy. We walked back to the car. Daniel snapped his seatbelt into its holder with more force than a seatbelt deserves. "You did this to humiliate me," he said. "No, Daniel," I said. "You did this. I am only stopping it." "I am your son," he said, as if the word could be a key that opens the wrong lock. I did not answer. We drove home. Melissa was on my front porch with the photographer's tripod collapsed in her hand like a threat. Maddie sat on the swing with her math book open and her pencil not moving. She looked up at me with a face that asked 1,000 questions and kept them polite on the outside. In the next week, things that had been invisible became very visible. Melissa's real estate license, which had been pocketed under the team name they used for marketing, it was kept active under their team's brokerage paperwork rather than prominently listed in her own name, and it came up for review when a complaint landed on the desk of the board, attempting to list a property without proof of ownership. Alma had written that complaint after I showed her the text Melissa sent to her stager that said, "Tight window, elderly owner will not be present, do not worry about clutter in the basement, it will be gone soon." Adult Protective Services opened a case. I did not love the sound of case, but I liked the person they sent, a man named Octavio whose mother lived 3 blocks from the park where Ruth and I used to walk after dinner. He said he would not blow up my family if he could help it, he would guide me through the part where the money had to be counted. He said people do strange things when they feel entitled to another person's comfort. He said some of those things are crimes. We went through my accounts. I had kept a ledger that would make Alma proud, but even a careful man has blind spots. I had not noticed that my gas bill had been paid twice in March, once from my checking and once from a new account I did not know existed. I had not noticed that my credit card had an added authorized user with my last name and a delivery address over at Daniel's. The bank reversed what it could. The credit on the gas bill is probably going to last into the grave. Then came the questions from the county recorder's office, in friendly envelopes, labeled with stickers, where I learned that Daniel had filed a notice of proposed transfer with a title company 2 days after my surgery, a piece of paper that did not do what he wanted but did tell me what he intended. I also learned that someone had filed a complaint saying I did not have the capacity to sign anything, a complaint that fizzled the second Alma faxed, yes, she still faxes, the neurologist's letter with the clock I drew in the corner like a schoolboy. I do not think my son set out to become a villain. I think he set out to become a man who never had to open his own wallet when mine was nearby. That is an easy slope to slide. The trick, Alma says, is to put grooves in the slope so people cannot go fast even when they want to. The trust was a groove. The right of use agreement with the literacy nonprofit was a groove. The capacity letter was a groove. Octavio, it turns out, was also a groove. Melissa lost her composure in an email thread with her broker that got forwarded to Alma by a receptionist who did not like bullies. She wrote, "Fine. I will get into a home if it kills me," which Alma highlighted in yellow as if to give it a high-visibility vest so no one would run it over. The broker called her into his office and told her she was suspended pending review. Melissa cried in the parking lot. "I know this because we all know the woman who runs the dry cleaner 2 doors down, and she calls things as she sees them." Then came the meeting. The set piece. The kind of scene movies pretend do not happen in real life. Alma booked the conference room at the community center, the one that used to be a kiln when the brick factory was still producing, and set 3 chairs on one side and 3 on the other. On our side, me, Elaine, and Alma. On theirs, Daniel, Melissa, and a lawyer whose tie looked expensive and whose briefcase looked like a picnic basket for snakes. He introduced himself as counsel and did not shake hands. Alma did not blink at that, which is how I knew she had seen worse. "I want to begin by making sure we understand the relief each party seeks," Alma said. "Mr. Benton would like to live in the home he owns without interference, to see his granddaughter, and to make his charitable gift as he and his late wife intended. He would like to be reimbursed for any funds that were removed from his accounts without his consent. He would like his son to stop trying to sell his house." "I have not tried to sell his house," Daniel said. Alma turned a page in her binder, the way a soldier might chamber a round. "Please explain this," she said. She slid across the table a printout of an email from Melissa to the stager with the words, "Elderly owner will not be present," and a line where she wrote, "List date, June 14th, and the asking price I will also not forget, $749,000. That might be low to you where you live or high, here it is a number that would stay in a person's mouth for an afternoon." Melissa clutched her purse straps like they might keep her from falling out of her chair. "We were pricing options," Daniel said. "Unilaterally," Alma said, and slid over another sheet, the signed photographer order, then the proposed listing agreement with a signature that looked like mine until you looked at the G in Benton and saw it had the wrong flourish. "Also," Alma said, and her voice softened, "this is the part that made me love her forever. Your father is not your option." Daniel actually wiped his eyes. He reached up like he was going to touch his face and then dropped his hand like it betrayed him. The lawyer with the snake picnic basket cleared his throat. "Our clients have concerns about Mr. Benton's safety." "I am sure they do," Alma said. "With him still in the house, they cannot list it." "You are enjoying this," he said. "I am doing my job," she said. Then she pulled out 3 copies of the right-of-use agreement and slid them toward him. "You will also find, counselor, that my client has already granted a license to the downstairs and the sunroom to the Little Harbors Literacy Project for a period of 25 years, renewable at the project's option for another 25, contingent on its good standing. That agreement includes a clause that any attempt to sell without the licensee's consent constitutes tortious interference with a charitable interest." I am not a lawyer, but even I like the way tortious interference sounds when it points at someone else. The lawyer's face did a small, useful twist. He asked for a minute with his clients and they scooted their chairs into a huddle that made me think of soccer again. Daniel covered his mouth with his hand and then moved it, as if he could push the words back into his throat. Melissa whispered something I could not hear. Maddie's backpack leaned against the chair beside me where she should have been sitting. She was at piano lessons. I stared at the zipper. When they turned back, the lawyer said, "We might be open to a civil settlement." "I am not," I said, before Alma could say anything. Not unless it includes a full accounting of the funds taken, repayment, and a written apology that names the things you did. Do not be dramatic, Dad, Daniel said. We are family. We are, I said. That is why I am not calling the press. That is why I am not pressing criminal charges for the forged listing agreement, the attempted unauthorized withdrawals, and a false report to Adult Protective Services that I had dementia and left the stove on 6 times this month. I will agree, for the sake of my granddaughter, to settle this civilly. But you will return the money. You will sign an agreement saying you will never seek to list or encumber my house. You will leave the key under the back steps, and if I ever find that lock turned by anyone but me, I will replace the door. It is a strange thing to look at your son and see a stranger wearing his face. It is also strange to look harder and see your own face under his, the jaw that clenches when the gears grind, the eyes that droop when it is time to face a thing you made. I do not say this to excuse him. I say it because the truth is more complicated than a villain's mask. He is my child. He tried to sell my home. Both are true. They signed the settlement in that room, not because the lawyer saw the light but because he saw the law. Alma had lined up 3 witnesses from the Kiwanis who would swear to the authenticity of every document in our folder, had a recorder on the table, and had already filed the trust and license. The only thing left to argue about was whether Melissa could keep her license after the board met. That was not our call. We inserted a clause I insisted on: they could see Maddie at my house on Sunday afternoons if they called first and brought nothing but themselves. No cameras, no stagers, no clipboards. If they violated the clause, it was void forever. Melissa rolled her eyes but signed. Daniel did not look up at me for a long time. He finally did. I do not know how to say I am sorry for this, he said. You just did, I said. Now show me. He and Melissa walked out of the community center into a rain that had been waiting a week to fall. Alma squeezed my shoulder. Elaine pressed her hand to my back between my shoulder blades like she had when she was 5 and had to make sure I was still there. We packed up the folder. Alma put a copy in a bank box that afternoon. She is that way. If you are waiting for the part where someone gets arrested and the crowd claps, I will disappoint you. There were no handcuffs then. There were consequences. Melissa's license was suspended for a year and she had to take an ethics course she complained about to anyone who would listen, at least until Octavio reminded her that complaining to the wrong people makes its own kind of file. Daniel did side jobs for a handyman named Lou who pays in cash and good advice. He sat in a church pew twice without making a face. Ruth's room opened in September. June hung a sign with Ruth's name and, beside it, a photograph of Ruth reading to 3 children at the public library in 1988. I had not seen that photograph. Tamsin found it in a box in the attic and brought it to June, who cried in the way women cry when they see another woman doing good work with her face lit by kindness. The first day Little Harbors held tutoring, 2 boys who could not sit still in their own classroom sat perfectly still because Ruth was watching from the wall. The second day, a girl who had been falling behind in math told me the times tables will listen if you speak to them with respect. I moved the quilts to the sunroom for the winter and told June to let the children use them. She folded them back more carefully than I did. Maddie and I made cocoa on Wednesdays and sat at the foot of the basement stairs to listen to the murmur of kids sounding words out. She leaned into me and said, "Pops, Grandma would like this." I told her I knew. She asked me why her parents had done what they did. I told her the truth: sometimes people confuse love with ownership, and when they do, they make terrible plans. She put her head on my arm and stayed there for a while. Daniel did another hard thing that winter. He came to my house on a Sunday and brought no one but himself. He stood on the porch with his hands in his pockets for so long I almost opened the door before he knocked. When he did, I stepped aside. He walked in and looked at the framed city map and the hook by the door where I keep my favorite hat. He said, "Dad, I put $200 back in your account this week. I will keep doing it until I pay the whole amount." "It was $13,742, I said. "Not counting the gas bill. I like the gas bill the way it is. It will make the heirs laugh." He smiled like he could imagine that picture, years from now, a grandkid laughing at a gas credit the way other families laugh at a crooked scar. We wrote the number down on a yellow sticky note and stuck it under a magnet on the fridge. He sat at my table and did not reach for my pen. I put the pen in his hand. The next spring, he helped me build a little free library on a post that faced the sidewalk. He did not charge me for the labor. He stayed for dinner and ate without making a face at the salt. He sometimes still calls me when he is sitting in his car outside a job site and thinks no one wants to hear the sound of his breath. I listen. We changed the locks, but I did not change his number in my phone. Grooves can be made in that paper, done right, can protect what your hands cannot. The charitable right-of-use agreement made it impossible to stage my living room for a lie. The trust made it impossible to list my house on a whim. The capacity letter made it impossible for a bureaucrat who never met me to pretend I was losing sentences. On a Thursday in June, 16 months after my knee gave me trouble, the sheriff who had said, "Put out your wrists," at Maple Meadows came to Ruth's room to read to the kids. A photographer from the paper took a picture of him sitting on the floor with a little boy leaning against his knee like a cat. The picture ran on Sunday with my Ruth's name in the caption. Daniel sent me a photo of the paper and a heart. Melissa sent nothing. Maddie brought cookies. After the kids left, I turned off the lights and sat in the twilight of my basement, which used to be a place where I kept tools and is now a place where words are tools and you can watch them build. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the small scrap of paper I keep there, the one with the words Alma said in her office the day we started, written in the neat block printing Ruth taught me when we were young, "You are not a bill." I said, "We did it, Ruth." I put my hand on the wall to feel the house hum. Houses make a sound if you know how to listen, the distant water through pipes, the truss wood settling a little, the air cracking against itself. The kids upstairs laughed at something June said. It was a sound I will carry across whatever bridge is last.
Hello everyone, and thank you for watching. I truly hope you enjoyed listening to this story as much as I enjoyed creating it. If you did, please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel to help support the creation of more stories like this. Have a great day or evening.